So welcome to our first concurrent session in this room. Right now, we have Mr. Nick Koretsky. He's an independent researcher from Russia. So he is our first virtual presenter in AzCALL. We are really excited and grateful that he decided to send out his proposal for his research to share with us. It's great to be able to include these researchers and scientists and teachers and writers who, for one reason or another, cannot be physically or come to the United States. That way they can also participate in this. Okay, so Mr. Koretsky, you take it from here.
Thank you very much, and hello, dear colleagues. As you already see, this is me, and my name is Nick, and I'm English language teacher. I teach mostly adults, but sometimes I teach children, like teenagers. I don't teach children like children, small of them. So my materials are mostly focused and will be helpful to those of you who are teaching adults, teenagers, maybe students. So in my teaching practice, I had a big problem, and this problem was teaching verbal grammar as the most difficult part of English language. At least in my practice, that was the most difficult one. And to overcome this problem, I developed a sort of a grammar organizer. And first, it was a quite simple set of clickable tables. So this is what you actually see. This is my website. As you probably recognize these tables, you all know what it is. So this is indefinite, continuous, perfect, perfect, continuous. And all these cells, they are clickable and very easily clickable, navigable. And my students, they can click and navigate, browse, and learn whatever they want. And as you see, all verbal grammar is divided into three major parts, which is modals. As you can see, these are key modal verbs with clickable tables, as you see here: present, past, and future. Infinitives, well, just to make sure that my students, they recognize them and not be distracted with some unusual forms. And tenses, tenses as the most complicated one. As you see, these are clickable tables for active and passive forms. These dinosaurs are the ones that extinct like dinosaurs because they were too big and heavy, and they are not with us anymore because of that reason. So what I actually do with it, first I give it to my students, but maybe you will also find it helpful, as I find it helpful, not to give the students all the tenses at once. I usually give it like 9 of them, which helps to save their memory and to focus them on the ones that actually matter for them, which is usually present indefinite, what I start with. And if you decide to use my tables, please use these buttons. And I recommend using Chrome browser, because with the Internet Explorer, it will not work. So how you can use it? You open the cell that you want. This is how you focus attention of your students. They can click and explore conjugation tables, and they also click and explore the ways how to put the questions to these tables. You see, because usually this is the source of a major part of the problems that they have at the beginning and up to intermediate and maybe beyond even intermediate level. And this is the tool that will save you a lot of time and nerves, and will focus your students exactly to the core of the problem. Okay, so remember, these are full tables for more advanced students, And this is a simplified version which will help you to do the job exactly where you need it. Okay, so this is it. These tools are free on the websites. I will provide the links by the end of this presentation. So what I actually do, just as an example of using, for example, if a student already knows at least some tenses, I want to make sure that they are familiar with them and they handle them properly. I give them this simple text. And then I ask them to color related parts, I color them related parts with yellow tenses, green infinitives, and blue modals. And as soon as they will start doing it, you will see a lot of difference from your perception of text and of the same text perception by your students. There is a huge difference how they see. And this colored part works as a layer of augmented reality, which makes their thinking visual to you. And this is how you can start looking at their mistakes by their eyes. And of course, having this perspective, you are able to correct those mistakes. So once again, color coding, proper color coding of the parts is one of the steps to the right direction. Once they master this level, the next part is putting questions to each yellow and green part. Why I'm telling yellow and green, but not tenses and infinitives, just not to scare students with these complicated words, because they are beginners in the language. They are not quite comfortable with all that complicated terms. So as soon as you eliminate this terminology and switch to color coding, you will see how much easier perception of students become and how quicker they start to think and to correct the mistakes. So, for example, I ask them, put a question to this part. For example, like we know, these could be questions to subject, it could be questions to predicate. Exactly from this moment, they start making mistakes. And exactly this is when your tables come into play. You give them this table and ask them to correct themselves, finding the mistakes they made and checking that their thinking is within these tables, okay? And they can click and navigate and correct themselves. Again, this is refocusing their attention from your personality, from your speaking, to the core of grammar mechanics, which is decreases your teaching burden and increases your efficiency as a teacher in class. So this is it. Of course, it's easier said than done, and you will, if you start and if you decide to try it, you will see there's a lot of things to do here. But once they master it, it means that they quickly progress in one of the most difficult parts of English grammar. So in my practice, it was quite successful one, but sometimes students complain that, you know, Nick, it's too many tables and it's too difficult to navigate, they're too scary. So what I decided to do, since I have some engineering background and I am amateur 3D model designer, I redesigned this 2D setting into a 3D setting. This is how my grammar cube appeared. You see? The idea is pretty much the same. You see, we have these tenses, active and passive. We have infinitives, active and passive. And all these tables, of course, they are clickable. You can use them if you are teaching online, you can use it right away in your browser. If you are teaching in class, you can use it in your interactive board, whatever you have. Maybe you have tablets. Well, whatever your resources you have, you may use it. Okay. Just to give you an example of how it happens, this is what my students do. This is one of the girls that we did it in one of the schools here in Russia. We showed this to my students, teenagers actually, and they first they were a little bit scared with this complexity, but they got used to it very quickly, and they became very much comfortable with it. They started to play, as you see, clicking here and there. So generally, it was quite a successful experience. Uh, it took only maybe an hour for them to get used to it. So this is it. What else? How else it could be used for more advanced level? With more advanced level students, because I teach to like engineers and computer programmers, I developed for them this 3D setting with this transformer, which is giving them an understanding of English tenses and time relationships in 3D. For example, I teach them English tenses have only one future, but two pasts. The deeper past, like this one, and this closer past with past indefinite and past continuous. And this particular setting, not with all students, but with some of them, like I said, with engineering and computing background, helps them to visualize and understand the problem of teaching present perfect, which, as we all know, is one of the most difficult parts with teaching, like, because it is actually a bridge between past and present, and usually quite hard for understanding with students who are not familiar with English system of grammar and system of tenses presentation. Okay. One more thing, which is usually quite helpful as well, is teaching sequence of tenses. I will try to explore it in a more detailed way. This is what I built as the way, as a tool to teach a sequence of tenses. And being presented on this 3D setting, it gives them a visual, clear understanding of these tenses shift rules. Okay, future and future in the past. Then we have shift of present to past. Then we have simple past to prior past shift. And then we have a shift from continuous past to prior continuous past. It may look quite mechanical, but as I said again, it helps to visualize, and for students at the beginning to intermediate level, it is a great relief, and they are much quicker grab the key idea, which you can tweak later on the more advanced stages. Okay? It pretty much the same works with passive, you see, future in the past. The same is present. The same rules, and we have simple past to prior past. And one more thing is easy to see why continuous past remains unchanged, because it doesn't have anything to set to migrate it, because it's the tense is dead. So sorry. The same with models. Future in the past would have to present, goes into past, must, switches to had to, and had to has nowhere to switch. It stays where it is. So pretty basic stuff, nothing complicated, but as I said, giving them a visual or embodiment helps students to progress in language quickly. And as I said, if you have interactive board in class, you can have engaging grammar lessons where students touch cube with their hands, play with it, interact, and memorize things much quicker. General idea for grammar cube is that it is pretty much the same as a globe for teaching geography. This is a cube for teaching English grammar. You can play with it, you can handle. This is how abstract grammar becomes tangible, playable, and much more easier to memorize. Well, this is pretty much the same what I have for now. I don't want to overload you with too much information. If you have any details, you can ask me now. Here are the web links to my resources. Everything is on my website. It's free. You're welcome to use it. And of course, if you decide to use it in your lessons and your class, I will be very much happy and appreciate you sending me your pictures, videos, sharing your experience, your problems, because it's in a developing phase, and I will be happy to consider what kind of problems you have using my resources. Well, actually, this is it. Thank you very much. I'm happy to answer your questions.
Thank you, Nick. So now we're going to open time for questions. We have considerable time. So let's see if we can share.
I will stop sharing my screen.
Okay.
And I will show my webcam if you don't mind.
Okay. So
okay.
you can
Hello. Hi guys.
Okay, that's for you to see your audience here. Okay, just a bit of them. And yeah, the room is open for questions.
So, does anybody have any questions?
Okay, we have
Sure,
Tim.
I have a question. That was great. Thank you so much. Very interesting and dynamic idea. My one question is, what are your thoughts as far as for the students when they're working with the cube, having them like connected with more like indexing more context? Because I think when you're going through and you can see the difference between the different grammatical formations, that's really important to see. But then also, if you can have like a reference to a picture with the activity at the same time, so that you can see like an action being done in the recent past compared to in the continuous past, then maybe that could also be an option. I don't know if it's easy to program as another layer of the cube. But wondering if you'd thought about that, or if you had any plans for that, or.
Well, thank you for the suggestion. And actually, I didn't have this kind of a perspective. Thank you for a fresh idea. I will definitely will be happy to elaborate on it. And if we change emails and we will get into deeper, I will be happy to add this layer. Sure. Well, whatever I can do is we can add it, of course. Right now, honestly, I was just trying to deal with my problem. And my problem was, as I'm teaching non-native speakers, they have a big problem with dealing with this huge number of variety of English grammar tenses, the forms, the different rules of applying. So they drown in it so quickly that I needed sort of an organizer to help them at least keep in some sort of order, at least something that will keep them afloat. Otherwise, they just drown and they spend years just trying to sort things out. And actually, the years that they spend to learn English is not learning English. It's actually their desperate efforts to sort things out, in fact. And this is what I have, and this is when I solve this problem, they progress much quicker. I didn't put into my presentation, but with the system of teaching that I built around this grammar organizer, my students progress from basic level, like from 0 level to IELTS 5.0, 5.5 in just about, well, 80 to 120 hours. For your reference, the same level to reach in the regular methods takes at least 500 to 700 hours of teaching. I'm not sure how it happens in your part of the world, but this is what we teachers face in our part of the world. And you compare it, 700 hours or 80 hours, 80, okay? So this is very serious progress, and this is, well, the reason to consider it as a teaching tool, okay? Well, of course, it needs to reconsider the ways of teaching. Of course, there are some assumptions to do, but generally it works. And this is why I'm sharing with colleagues and try to have feedback, get your troubles into consideration, help people to maybe to have something as a tool. Why not? Professional tool. Okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I have one question.
Mhm.
I know you say you're using it for teachers. So you as a programmer have access to how many hours and who's logging on. So if a teacher were to use this in class, is there any way they can get that data or information of what students logged on, how long?
Sorry, but I'm not that much of advanced programmer. I'm
Okay.
just
Well, I mean, you're saying the
we-
hours. So in my mind, I'm like, I want to know how many hours they actually use this.
No, I can say what I have. When we speak about teaching hours,
Yeah.
from speaking about those 80 hours of teaching from 0 to IELTS 5.0, I have 3 steps, and the first 20 to 30 hours of teaching, this is the most frequent period of using it. After these 25 to 30 hours, students progress in English grammar, in this particular part, verbal grammar, so much that they memorize it and they actually don't need it anymore. They have it here in their mind, you see? So after that level, we switch to other sorts of problems with vocabulary, with semantics, with more subtle details, which actually not mechanical, but more linguistical problems. You see, this is where teaching becomes teaching in more normal, in more pedagogical way, you see?
Yeah.
More convenient for teachers as a teacher. Okay?
So you're using it more as an in-class tool.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Anybody else? Another question? Yes. Okay, we have another one.
Hi, thank you for your presentation. I was curious how comfortable your young students are with the grammar technical terms like infinitives and participles, because from my experience, I haven't worked a lot with kids, but a lot of times they just end up being lost in this maze of like, should I use infinitive here? And they're not really focusing on the form and of the function of that grammatical form, structure, tense, whatever it is.
Absolutely, you're absolutely correct, because once again I highlight, I don't teach kids like children. I teach from 10 years old and up. These are not already children, these are teenagers. And the sweetest age for me is from 10 to maybe 12, 13 years old, because they are already not children, they are small grown-ups, but with the advantage of having these endless, virtually infinitive memory of a child. You see, and I consider this small window of opportunities, very small, but this is, well, I see it, this is sweet spot. This is when you can do anything. And you're absolutely right. They are scared as hell from these tenses, past, perfect, continuous, present, indefinite, and they get scared. So, so this is why I use color coding. You see, I run away from these infinitives, tenses as quickly as I can, and I use colors. Say, okay, please put me the question to this yellow part. Okay, or please put a question to this blue part, which is models, okay? And I never, let me share your screen just one more time to show you what I have. Do you see my screen?
Yes.
Yes, we can.
Okay. Once again, as a tip for you, for example, when I show them, you see they are colored for a purpose. You see, these yellow, this is infinitives green, the models are blue, because I address them as colors, not as parts of speech, parts of verbal grammar. And as you see here, I have a red rectangle on the top, and I have a circle on the left, which is, as you can see, questions to subject. And these are questions to predicate, but I never pronounce the words predicate. I never say the word subject. I said we have 5 types of questions, 5 types of sentences, which is plus, question, and minus. And we have red square, and we have a red circle. That's it. You see? This is why they became far less scared, and they progress much faster. You see? Because it's just a square, and this is just a circle. You see? Not so scary at all. So this is just a tip, okay? If you decide to use it. So I'm back with you. So hope I answered your question.
Yes, thank you.
Yes. So I think that's the time we have left. Thank you so much for being part of this experience. We're appreciating you sharing your creation with us, and I hope to see you next year back here. Maybe you have an update to show us.
Yes, of course. I will be happy.
So let's give another round of applause to Mr. Thank you very much. Have a great rest of the day.